Hey, everybody. It is Wednesday, July 9th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. Hey, this is the place where we bring you just the facts.
We read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, I wasn't sure whether I was going to do the NPR impression again. I caught myself off guard. I was like, Moshe, where are we going? How are we doing this today? So here we are on this July 9th, which I'm told is National Sugar Cookie Day, Jill.
Like we need an excuse to have a sugar cookie. I love a good sugar cookie.
But of the cookies that exist, do you waste the calories on a sugar cookie amongst the many cookie options available to people these days?
So it sounds like you're leaning towards a no, but I would make the opposing argument and say that sugar cookies are simple and perhaps overlooked because of their simplicity.
Well, you would say that on Sugar Cookie Appreciation Day.
I would.
We might have to ask our friends on the Slack channel. Jill, we just surpassed 2,000 of our premium members are on the Slack channel. Think about it. 2,000 of your fellow Mo News community members all in one chat room, and then various channels. The book channel keeps blowing up, and then I woke up yesterday to find that everyone was sharing recipes and things they were eating recently. A lot of fun we're having over there. I'll have to poll the crowd on how they feel about sugar cookies.
So what I'm really appreciating is that you have Mo News premium members from all over the country, really from all over the world. But I would say particularly,
we got New Zealand popping off. We got some people in Iran too in the chat.
Okay, well, that is like a whole other thing that we need to talk to them about the war and really get their perspective on what's going on. But
like we're not going to waste the sugar cookie conversation on our folks and our friends in Iran.
But even for people here in the United States, I've been noticing that you have a lot of people who are saying, I'm traveling to Santa Barbara. Do you have any recommendations? Or traveling to San Diego? And then you've got a lot of people who live in those places who are saying, go check out this. So if you are hesitating to join Mo News Premium, I think it pays for itself in terms of just a great restaurant recommendation or a great travel recommendation.
Book recommendation. Someone's like, I'm packing my carry-on right now. Which book should I pack in there? I'm looking for a thriller. I'm looking for a rom-com. I'm looking for some sort of romance novel. I'm looking for some nonfiction. It's been great. Yesterday, Jill, I was also throwing in there like things we're working on for the newsletter. What are your thoughts on this? Left and right interviews we have coming up. I'm sitting down with Mayor Adams today, actually, for a future episode, who's obviously running for re-election here in New York. I was like, hey, Mo News Premium friends on Slack, what are you thinking about? What do you want to ask him? So we launched that this week. It's just like the latest feature we have in Mo News Premium, beyond the extra coverage, beyond the Q&As, beyond the workshops, beyond the premium podcast. And so now the Slack thread with a couple thousand of your closest friends around the world.
If anyone gets married because of Mo News Premium, like if any potential matches find each other, I hope we're invited to the wedding.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, people have asked for years, Jill, can you launch Mo News Dating? Like, smart people, can think outside the box and question their own opinion. That I think there's something reflective of our audience that is attractive to people, right? Like if you are attracted to Mo News and the type of coverage that we do, you're probably smart. Well, you're not probably smart. You definitely are smart.
Thoughtful.
You're probably funny. Great personality. Well-traveled. Hot commodity, the singles in the Mo News market. So maybe soon enough, we'll probably have to launch like a dating channel on the Slack to let people meet each other. Though, I will admit we are majority female in terms of our audience. So
Matches by Mo.
I
like that. But we should probably get to the topic at hand, the headlines. All right, get ready to keep your shoes on at the airport. The TSA is set to end its shoe removal policy at some airport security checkpoints. What is behind the decision?
One small step for the TSA, one giant leap for
passengers.
Yeah, one giant leap for passengers.
To Texas, where we learned on Tuesday that more than 160 people are still missing after those devastating floods. So what kind of safety improvements could be in the works to better warn people about rising floodwater? To D.C., where the Supreme Court has cleared the way for mass firings at federal agencies, and what to know about student loan repayment and the big, beautiful bill. And hi, it's Marco Rubio calling.
Marco. Not Rubio.
Or is it AI? Someone is using AI and Signal to impersonate Marco Rubio and contact foreign officials.
So if you're getting invited to a single chat from a Marco Rubio, there is, well, it's probably more likely than not actual Marco Rubio, but I can't say 100% without a doubt.
To the workplace where there are fewer middle managers. What's behind that? And early numbers show that Amazon Prime Day spending is down from last year. Why some sellers are not offering those big discounts this time around. Plus, Moshe is on this day in history.
On this day in history, a wife unhappy with her husband's rule launches a coup on him and takes over a country. Can you name that leader?
All right, starting with some big changes coming to airport security. After nearly 20 years, passengers in the U.S. will no longer have to take their shoes off. The Transportation Security Administration, or TSA, will be phasing out the security requirement. Although the policy change hasn't been officially announced, the White House press secretary responded to reports on X, calling it, quote, big news from the Department of Homeland Security. Officials say new advanced imaging technology and improved threat detection systems make shoe removal unnecessary for most travelers. The change is expected to be rolled out gradually. The goal is to speed up lines and improve the passenger experience. There are reports that passengers flying out of a number of airports, Honolulu, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Fort Lauderdale, and Cincinnati, did not have to take their shoes off this week, although passengers at Chicago O'Hare still being asked to remove footwear.
Of course, O'Hare would do that. And I say this as a native Chicagoan. O'Hare, lock it up. Nothing but love for O'Hare, except for Terminal 2. That needs dire need of renovation. Terminal 5 also dire need of renovation there at O'Hare, though I know they're undergoing that right now. But I am going to fly to Chicago, Jill, in a couple of weekends. So O'Hare, if I have to take actually I'm TSA pre, it doesn't matter. But anyway, just get it together, Chicago.
And Moshe, we were talking on our editorial call to some of the interns who were born after 9/11. And they have never experienced a time when they did not have to take off their shoes at the airport.
Yeah. Well, kids, get on Pop's knee and let me tell you about back in '01 when you could keep your shoes on. You could also walk all the way to the gate and greet your family members as they walked off a plane. You didn't have to wait before security for that. It's quite a time back then. But of course, given the events that unfolded on 9/11 and afterwards, a lot of restrictions would come into place. In fact, this shoe requirement came into basically as a hard requirement in 2006. Now, it does emanate from an incident that happened in late 2001. That's when an al-Qaeda-trained terrorist named Richard Reed tried to detonate an explosive in his shoe on a flight from Paris to Miami. That flight was diverted to Boston. A bunch of passengers are like, is that guy trying to light his shoe on fire? Yes, he had explosives in there. And thankfully, very alert passengers there in the aftermath of 9/11, as well as a flight attendant, were able to prevent Richard Reed from blowing up his shoe and then blowing up that plane. Now, Richard Reed, by the way, is sitting in federal prison right now for the rest of his life. He's been convicted for multiple lifetimes there. But they were doing it intermittently after 2001 and then put the shoe requirement into effect in 2006. There has been criticism that making everyone take off their shoes is a little extreme. The Israelis have a different form of security at their airports where they behaviorally profile people and in some cases ethically profile, or in some cases profile people in other ways, but that prevents 87-year-old grandmothers from having to take off their shoes. And so this sort of same for everyone approach has been criticized. It appears here they're finally, after 20 years of taking our shoes off, pulling back on that. Now, the TSA still has that liquids rule. We'll see how long that lasts. That's also in response to one failed incident of trying to blow up liquid explosives on a plane. Jill, we were noting on our call yesterday, too, the underwear bomber. There was an al-Qaeda underwear bomber back in 2009, a guy, a Nigerian terrorist, who attempted to detonate plastic explosives in his underwear. Luckily, the TSA did not institute an underwear rule. That would have been too much, right?
Awkward.
Awkward. All right, everybody. That just like the infrastructure for that over one failed incident would have been too much. The shoe thing somehow has been in effect here for a while, even though technology has improved, scanning technology has improved, etc. Now, of course, one of the reasons to get TSA pre-check in recent years is to avoid taking your shoes off. So if that was your main pet peeve, then I think the TSA is already saying they recognize they will probably see a lot of cancellations for TSA PreCheck, though it still promises quicker lines than the regular line. So we'll see how much of an impact that has. But it's very rare these days that we get to begin the podcast, Jill, with some positive news. And so here you are. The days of taking your shoes off are gradually over here, folks. Unless, of course, the government's decided like they got a problem with you and where you're traveling to or how often you travel. And then you will still have to take your shoes off. I'm talking to you out there.
Okay, now to Central Texas, where search and rescue efforts continue for a 6th day today. The weather is expected to be much drier after days of rain and continuing flood risks. The death toll has risen to at least 109 people. The vast majority of those fatalities, 87 victims, are in hard-hit Kerr County. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said on Tuesday that at least 161 people are still known to be missing in the Kerr County area. Camp Mystic, which we've been talking a lot about, still has 5 campers and 1 counselor missing. The governor said law enforcement agencies have been working together to identify people who may have been down by the river, who no one really had a counting of, including people staying at camps or hotels who weren't registered there. Hope, though, is dimming for finding anyone else alive. No survivors have been found since Friday in Kerr County, where most of the deaths occurred. And now more questions about whether local officials took any action to warn campers and residents about the rising water. Local officials have repeatedly refused to answer, or they've been redirecting questions about emergency response and preparedness efforts in the early hours of July 4th. That includes answering whether a key emergency response official locally was asleep overnight ahead of potential flash floods. As we've reported, a lot of people had been spending the July 4th weekend in that scenic area, which has been long known to locals as Flash Flood Alley. So reporters on Tuesday asked Texas Governor Greg Abbott, who is to blame for this catastrophe? And he said that is the word choice of, quote, losers. And he compared it to Texas football and Friday Night Lights. Here's a bit of what he had to say.
The losing teams are the ones that try to point out who's to blame. The championship teams are the ones that say, don't worry about it, man. We got this. We're going to make sure that we go score again, that we're going to win this game. The way winners talk is not to point fingers. They talk about solutions. What Texas is all about is solutions.
So, Moshe, I've been watching a lot of the press conferences, and from the governor on down, you're not seeing a lot of officials looking backwards. They really want to look forwards. They say their priority now is just this search and rescue effort. Texas officials do say, though, that they will fund a statewide flood siren warning system, something that Kerr County had been asking for since 2016. Local leaders there spent nearly a decade pushing for a modern warning system. They conducted an engineering study and filed multiple formal applications for state and federal funds. All were denied.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk now about the origins of this. And Jill, the siren system was not going to be that pricey. Too pricey for Kerr County, but only about $1 million, they say, to have installed a siren system along an area called Flash Flood Alley. And this is something that goes back nearly a decade. In the aftermath of another flash flood in a nearby county, the Kerr County officials said, you know what, we might need a siren system to ensure that once warnings go out, that people can be alerted to it, similar to a tornado warning system that we have in much of the country, or in Israel, the missile alert sirens that alert people to incoming missiles. And that's actually something that the state authorities have now invoked. So going back to 2016, Kerr County officials said, you know, listen, we might need a siren system here because it turns out that the existing system is decades old, only alerts emergency personnel, does not alert the public. And we have a lot of tourists here and campers here and people not familiar with the region. And there were huge debates internally about it, but they ended up going to the state. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, multiple times, it appears, here based on this reporting from the Houston Chronicle. And every time they were rejected. Now, keep in mind, the county has a relatively small budget. They couldn't afford spending $1 million on their own. And they said, hey, state, can you help us out here? We'll put a little bit of money towards this. And the state rejected their application. There's been a lot of criticism in Texas that much of the state budget has been focused on immigration, understandably. But there's a huge flood situation in Texas. More than 1,000 people have died in recent decades in major floods. And again, this place is called Flash Flood Alley. It sees a lot of tourists. And so there's thought to spend there, but there's been criticism that the Texas government's also been very focused on cutting property taxes, so having even less money. Yet Texas does have a surplus. So a lot of people are asking questions, including our Mo News community in Texas, about how just something that was as cheap as $1 million could not have been funded privately or through the state in order to be installed. Now, part of that is also explained, Jill, by the fact that locally, 100% of the people were not behind this. One, they didn't want their taxes raised if they were worried about that. Two, some felt that sirens would, disturb the area. Three, many people said, well, we're familiar with the flooding and we know what to do. And we have a phone system and neighbors call neighbors. And that's how we do stuff here in Kerr County. So a lot of minutes have come out. Some of you have sent me minutes from county meetings in recent years, where also there was apparently some federal money available, but some people were like, well, that's coming from the Biden administration. We're not going to take that communist money, was what one official said. But nonetheless, the county did apply for this funding multiple times, did not get this funding. Now in the aftermath of that, the lieutenant governor, in particular, Dan Patrick, was on Fox News in the past day. We put a clip up on Instagram. He's like, we got to have one of these systems, and we're going to ensure that we have the system moving forward, regardless of what people say. A reminder, as there has been criticism of the warnings and when they came. When the National Weather Service put out its alert just after 1 a.m., Jill, that still would have given people a couple hours to get out before the flood waters really rose. And that's the alert that essentially said, if you're low level near the river, get out, flash flood warning. Now, they would do a much more aggressive alert just after 4 a.m. as the waters really started to rise. But even then, sirens going off might have woken some people up, and they would have been able to potentially run to dry ground, with minutes to spare and maybe not even the hours to spare. So there's a lot of talk in Texas saying we need a siren system. There's a lot of finger pointing happening. And obviously, people in charge don't want to blame themselves for it. They want to blame other people for it. Not surprising to see this sort of blame game go on. Not surprising to hear from state authorities, we got to look forward, not back. Well, because it turns out that maybe some people made some bad decisions. But I don't think this debate or this discussion or the finger pointing is going to end anytime soon. I guess the one piece of good news out of this horrific tragedy is that ideally they put some systems in place that are updated for this century, including a siren system.
Right. And I was listening to an interview with one of the counselors at Camp Mystic, and she was saying that they don't have cell phones. So that's where that type of siren would be very useful. And I would imagine that there's a lot of people like that, especially given that the area is filled with camps and people camping in general. Maybe they have their phones off. So that is where the siren would become particularly helpful.
And you're in hill country there in Texas. So even if you had your phones, there's many areas there that don't have reception. And so that was an issue too, that even if this alert went out on your phone's emergency alert, on X, on whatever, it's the middle of the night. This is sort of the nightmare. This was the nightmare scenario where they believe sirens might have been helpful.
All right, time for the speed read from the New York Times. The Supreme Court says the Trump administration can move forward with plans to slash the federal workforce and dismantle federal agencies. The decision could result in job losses for tens of thousands of workers at agencies, including the Departments of Housing and Urban Development, State, and Treasury. The order lifted a lower court's ruling that had blocked mass layoffs. The order was unsigned. It did not include a vote count, which is typical in such emergency applications. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson wrote a public dissent.
This was a major case to test how much authority Donald Trump has over the federal government, over the executive branch, and how they can potentially remove people. Now, this is not the final decision, but this effectively allows them to proceed with some of the firings, even if in the final decision, which will come later, they decide that he might have gone over his authority. But in the meantime, people are losing their jobs. So this does allow him to move forward with restructuring plans. The Supreme Court giving him leeway right now to do that as we await a more final decision as other cases go through the courts here. Now, the justices were pretty vague. They didn't get specific or express a view on the legality of specific layoffs or reorganization. So this is certainly, again, not the final case, and we're going to see more cases come up to the court regarding various firings and reorgs and all the various agencies that are pursuing them.
For Mo News, another feature of President Trump's big, beautiful bill signed into law last week that is getting a lot of attention from our community are the new limits on student loans that Americans can borrow from the federal government. The law caps borrowing for graduate students at $20,500 a year and $100,000 over a lifetime. And then for medical or law school students, the limit is $50,000 a year and $200,000 over a lifetime. But what those caps mean is that a lot of students won't be able to borrow enough money to cover the full price of graduate or professional school. A recent study found that the median cost for 4 years of public medical school was $287,000. That's for the class of 2024. And that amount goes up to over $390,000 at a private school. The average total cost of law school in the latest school year was just over $217,000.
Yeah, so in both cases, for law students, for medical students, they're going to have to find another way to pay for college if they're not able to put in much of their own money there. And this law also goes into detail when it comes to other aspects of student loans and the repayment of loans. The law sets a $65,000 limit and no longer allows repayment on the Parent Plus loans. Those are unsubsidized loans for parents designed to support dependent undergraduate students. The changes also phase out several Biden-era repayment plans. They're going to offer just two options now. One is a plan that allows you to repay your loans over 10 to 25 years. So that's what's called the standard plan. Then they have a new plan called the Repayment Assistance Plan, which would allow borrowers to repay their loans in monthly payments based on between 1 to 10% of their income and requires you to pay for 30 years before you're eligible for loan forgiveness. Now, according to the Congressional Budget Office, that's the nonpartisan arm that runs the numbers, this will save the government $300 billion over the next decade. And that's part of why the Republicans are pursuing this. The bigger thing for Republicans, and the argument you hear from them, is that no limits on student loans has basically allowed colleges and universities to charge whatever they want, because they know that students will be able to pay whatever they charge because they'll get unlimited loans from the federal government, putting students in a terrible amount of debt. So Republicans see this as a tactic to rein in the price of tuition, especially graduate tuition, and basically curtail what universities can do. We have seen the price of tuition just completely obliterate, Jill, inflation. There's inflation, and then there is like the skyrocketing cost of tuition over the last couple of decades. And they believe that the fact that the government just hands out these unlimited loans is a major problem here. But then you have the critics who are saying that ultimately this will price lower income students out of higher education who need this. Also, they're concerned these new repayment plans will raise monthly payments for most new borrowers. And so while we get to the sort of reckoning or, a point here where Republicans and the Trump administration want universities to lower the amount of tuition, you're going to have a lot of people caught in the middle here. And that's what we've been hearing from the Mo News community who are like, what are they doing? I don't know whether, I can continue with my program at this juncture. A reminder, government loans are not the only loans you can get, but they're certainly the ones with the lowest interest and the best repayment plans. Of course, there's private loans out there, but those have much higher interest rates and are more challenging. And so this is leading to concerns among a number of people who are in the middle of professional degrees or who are in the midst of repaying their degrees. Especially those first few years, Jill, where you're coming out and you're not, making sky high amounts coming out with your degree, and you're still making it in those professions. So it's really putting a squeeze on that group of people.
I think where it's going to have a really big impact potentially on society is with doctors, because we're already seeing a doctor shortage around this country.
Yeah, that's one of the big concerns here is that that cap specifically when it comes to medical students comes at a time where we're already struggling to keep up the numbers and incentivize people to get into that profession because of the way of insurance costs and other impacts here. Becoming a doctor is not remotely as lucrative as it once was decades ago.
From Bloomberg, someone pretending to be Secretary of State Marco Rubio used AI-generated voice technology and a fake Signal account to contact foreign officials and at least one member of Congress. A State Department cable dated July 3rd said that an unknown person left voice and text messages for at least 5 people, including 3 foreign ministers, a U.S. governor, and a U.S. member of Congress, after creating a Signal account that pretended to be Rubio's back in June. According to the cable, quote, the actor likely aimed to manipulate targeted individuals using AI-generated text and voice messages with the goal of gaining access to information or accounts. And the campaign fit with a pattern of cases dating to April that saw unknown hackers impersonate senior U.S. officials. In late May, the Wall Street Journal reported that authorities were investigating an effort to impersonate the White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. The person claiming to be Wiles had contacted senators, governors, top U.S. business executives, and others. Moshe, I would love to know what the fake Marco Rubio said. Like, hey, it's Marco, want to chat?
Well, I mean, with AI, you can train it, and there's no shortage. I mean, there is, hundreds of thousands of hours of Marco Rubio speeches in the Senate, in his, various roles that he's had, where you could probably do, I mean, it doesn't take much. You just need to feed a couple seconds in some cases or a couple minutes of somebody into AI, and then they can have you say whatever. And for someone who's like not like his spouse or best friend, they might be like, oh yeah, hey Marco, like what's going on? Apparently the Signal, if you got a Signal invite from marco.rubio@state.gov, which, state.gov are the email addresses for State Department officials, that's not him inviting you to a Signal chat. Though we do know that they have accidentally, that wasn't him. I mean, he was on the chat, but somebody else invited the reporter to that Signal chat a few months ago. But ultimately here, the impersonators use the AI-generated voice messages, text messages, try to establish a rapport with various foreign officials. This is all according to the FBI here and various stuff that has come out in media reports. Obviously, they're using Signal because we've become very familiar, very publicly, with the fact that government officials are using Signal. So, people who, and a variety of foreign governments who all use Signal might be like, oh yeah, Marco's trying to hit me up to talk about what's going on in Ukraine or whatever's going on with that country. And so beware at the highest levels of government here, the White House Chief of Staff, Marco Rubio, AI. Jill, we knew this was coming. We knew that this was going to be challenging. This is where we're at in 2025. And as AI keeps getting better and better and better and video gets better, I mean, I don't know how far away we are from AI FaceTimes from someone being like, oh, hey, is that AI Jill? Or is that Jill? How do I test you?
You've got to ask me for a Seinfeld quote.
Well, no, but if we know you well enough, they would know. So I really need to think about something that is non-public, unknowable information that we have not shared on this pod. We need to stop sharing. We're oversharing on the podcast, Jill. We're
setting ourselves up. Yes.
We're setting ourselves up. We're setting ourselves up for AI to really replicate everything we know.
And our parents have been on the podcast, Moshe. So we're really screwed.
All right. Let's not tell everyone everything. Let's not remind them of everything.
All right. Some workplace trends from Axios. So-called middle managers could be a thing of the past. People managers now oversee about twice as many workers as just 5 years ago, according to a new analysis. So middle managers, like bosses who have bosses, were already quietly going extinct, and now AI could be speeding up the process. So there are now nearly 6 individual contributors per manager, up from a little over 3 in 2019. This is according to a report by Gusto, which handles payroll for small and medium-sized businesses.
I should note Gusto handles payroll for us here at Mo News, Jill.
Too much info, Moshe.
Sorry about that.
So for small companies, a lot of this has happened through attrition. So instead of replacing a manager who maybe retires, an existing one will just see an expanded scope, which means good luck during performance review season.
Yeah, I remember there was a time at CBS where I had 18 direct reports or 22 direct reports. I was like, it just was too much and it's not good, right? Because you're looking for guidance or feedback or whatever, dealing with some sort of crisis with a manager, and just it's too much. And so we always okay, how can we reallocate people in direct reports and whatnot? And it's a challenge, and I'm sure it's frustrating for both the managers out there, but also the people who now are one of 6 or one of 9 reporting to one person who, as you mentioned, just a couple of years ago, only had 3 direct reports because there were middle managers in between. They've called this the great flattening, and we've seen this trend line for a while now. We've seen it in tech. We're certainly seeing the potential impact here of AI as people try to utilize AI to eliminate certain roles. And they see that certainly at the junior role, but also the middle management role as well. And you're always trying to reduce layers, right? You always want to be more available as a boss, et cetera. But then it creates, a logjam when it comes to too many people reporting to one person. And then, of course, those managers can't work on leadership style issues because they're, dealing with sort of the day-to-day stuff. Anyway, I'm sure I'm speaking the language of many people in our audience who have worked in a variety of places. And so we have seen talk about reducing middle management is a popular thing. But of course, this is the downside to it. And we've heard it from Amazon. We've heard it from Google. We've heard it from Microsoft. We've heard it from Meta. A lot of these tech companies have been very public about it as well. Small businesses in the service sector, we certainly see it in restaurants, other hospitality businesses as well. And again, AI could have an impact here as we look at that. And one of the key things, Jill, is mentoring, right? When you're talking about mentoring, that's also a key thing you're looking for from a manager. And you're able to do that when you only have a couple direct reports, but when you have a whole bunch of direct reports, then mentoring goes out the window. And that's obviously a key component here of being in the workplace and, having a positive experience wherever you work. So, I sort of feel like, everything goes in waves and on a pendulum. And so it's like, everybody was so popular, like, let's eliminate middle management layers. So it's like, oh, we eliminated too much middle management. Now we need to bring back middle management, which will probably be the next Wall Street Journal story or Bloomberg story we'll bring you here in a few months. Middle management's back.
With a vengeance.
With a vengeance. It's amazing. Middle management's the most amazing thing. Why would we have ever gotten rid of it?
Well, there was a time when everybody was a vice president of something.
Right. Sometimes there's too many vice presidents. We know that. Too many people in a room, all with like a certain layer, but then you have the problem of like not enough vice presidents, it appears, which is where we're going.
Right. It's like entry level and CEO.
Entry level, a couple AIs, and then the CEO. Like that's basically the world in 10 years.
All right, and sticking with business news from Bloomberg, Amazon's Prime Day sales fell almost 14% in the first 4 hours of the event compared with the start of last year's sale. This is according to Momentum Commerce, which manages 50 brands in a variety of product categories. So Prime Day stretches over 4 days this year, up from 2 in 2024, which does make it hard to compare year over year. Shoppers could potentially be holding off in hopes that the discounts will deepen as the sale continues. But the initial hours are seen as a key indicator of its performance. In 2024, Prime Day sales spiked on the morning and evening of the first day, and then again on the evening of the second day. So this year's 4-day event will spread the sales over a longer period. Amazon first launched Prime Day in 2015 to attract new subscribers who pay $139 a year for shipping discounts, video streaming, and other benefits. About 196 million people in the U.S. had Prime memberships as of March, up 9% from a year earlier. Moshe, that's more than half of all American adults.
Yeah. The scope and scale is pretty incredible there. Now, one thing merchants and analysts are watching very closely is clues for what this says about the U.S. economy right now, about U.S. consumers. So certainly we'll be watching day by day here to see what we learn about how just consumers are feeling right now. Remember that 70% of our economy, about that, is a consumer-based economy, is based on just us buying things. That's the way American economy has worked here for several decades. So the less we buy, the larger impact it really has on the U.S. economy. We're not a manufacturing economy. We're a service-based economy and a consumer-based economy. So one of the things, as we look here for deals, Apple right now is standing out as one of the companies with some of the steeper discounts for electronics. That includes $89 AirPod 4 wireless earbuds, which apparently is less than what they cost last Black Friday. Also, Amazon has Echo and some products for sale as well. A reminder, this is not just about Amazon. You got Costco, you got Target, you got Walmart, have all started week-long sales this week. This is a big week here. So if you're already looking to get early on holiday shopping, back to school shopping, yes, I know it's only July, but this is where we're at. So definitely a look out there for deals, Jill. And we shouldn't just look at the big companies as well. A reminder that we have the Mo News Small Business Directory. So if you want to help your fellow Mo News community members, several hundred businesses there are listed over at mo.news/shop-small. That is mo.news/shop-small. And a reminder that if you're a Mo News Premium member, you get to have your business listed there in the Small Business Directory. All right, Jill. Now time for On This Day in History. We're going to go back to 1762 for one of my favorite monarchy stories. Catherine the Great, on this day, overthrew her husband, Tsar Peter III. Now, you've heard of Peter the Great. This was not Peter the Great. This is Peter. He's not so great. Peter III was the ruler of Russia for about 6 months. But then Catherine was like, you're terrible at this. Like, the country hates you. You are not good. You're like giving back certain land in Prussia. Like, the people, they're not a fan of you, hubby. And by the way, they weren't that close, because it turns out that she had a lover named Gregory Orlov, and her lover, Gregory, plan a coup on her husband. Now, by the way, don't feel bad for Tsar Peter III. First of all, terrible, apparently. And also, he had his own mistress. So he's with the mistress. The wife, she's got a lover, and she's planning with the lover, Gregory, and his brother to take down the husband. She's like, the country hates this guy. Like, we need to like take him out. And the problem is that one of the plotters in part of the plot, like, gets arrested. And they're like, oh my God, he's going to reveal all. Like, we need to do the plot tonight. So she's woken up in the middle of the night by her lover's brother. I don't know where the lover was at that point. The details escape us from 1762. And they're like, you got to do the coup now. So she's going base to base. She gets a bunch of military members. She gets to the palace and she declares herself in charge. And Peter's like, oh my God, can you believe what my wife did? Apparently, that's what he said to his mistress at the time. Like, I told you she was capable of this sort of thing. So he tries to escape. He's like, I've lost the country. Let me get out of here. He's turned around, forced to basically abdicate the throne. They put him in jail that night, July 9th, 1762. He dies. Mysterious circumstances, which is sort of the trend in Russia, Jill, now going back several hundred years. Nobody knows how he died. They're like, oh my God, he had a stroke.
Balcony? Let me guess.
Well, that's more of a Putin thing, pushing people out of windows. Actually, that's like a Soviet Union thing. That sort of happened during Khrushchev too. But I mean, it's been even happened this week. If you guys noticed on Mo News, on the Mo News Instagram channel, I was like, there's been 3 suspicious deaths of people who've fallen out of favor with Vladimir Putin this week. Anyway, bottom line is, Catherine takes over, and unlike her husband, who would serve for 6 months, she becomes the leader of Russia for more than 3 decades, and then eventually her son takes over. But Catherine the Great, known for modernizing Russia, actually known for taking a whole bunch of territory, including Crimea, which of course has been in the news of late as Vladimir Putin has retaken that. This is the thing about history, Jill. There's the famous quote that we attribute to Mark Twain, that history doesn't repeat itself, but history does rhyme. Anyway, one of the more interesting stories from Russian monarchy history.
That is screaming for a movie to be made about it.
Yeah, did I pitch it well? Like, that's a good pitch,
yes,
right?
I'm
Catherine's
very
like, my husband
interested.
sucks. We got to take it down. Hey, lover, can I work with your brother? Like, let's go take Peter out. I think we could probably make a series off of it. I mean, the whole monarchies of like the 16th, 17th, 18th century, they're all cousins with each other. The French monarchy, the German monarchy, the Prussians, the Brits, etc. There's a great series to be done there in sort of a modern twist.
Moshe, it could kind of be like The Crown, which even though we knew a lot of what was going to happen, it was cool to get at least what they think was happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, totally. We'll take The Crown back a couple centuries there. Jill, we stay in Europe with also a history that goes back longer than a century here. On this day in 1877, the first Wimbledon championship was held. It was a lawn tennis tournament, Jill. The game of tennis goes back to the French about 1,000 years. It was a handball game called Jeu de Paume, played on lawns, hence the grass there initially for the tennis. Same with British history. Look at this on this day in history. 1947, the engagement of Britain's then Princess Elizabeth to Philip Mountbatten was announced. Of course, they would be married for more than 70 years. And we end here with a bit of music history. On this day in 1962, Bob Dylan recorded Blown in the Wind. On this day in 1965, Sonny and Cher officially recorded the single I Got You, Babe. And on this day in 2001, the British TV series The Office debuted in the UK, making Ricky Gervais a star, and then, of course, spawning off the popular American version.
Moshe, a lot of middle managers in The Office.
There we go. Yes, it's definitely a show from a bygone era. So much middle management there.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It will help us grow. Follow us, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store. We appreciate it.
Love the reviews, especially on Apple. If you listen to us, you like us, give us those 5 stars and say some nice, kind words. It actually helps us continue to grow the podcast and makes it visible to more folks. Anyway, Jill, we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Mo News podcast. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed.